Escape room workers, what's the most absurd thing players have done? Obligatory, not an escape room worker, but a friend of mine and I checked one out in Denver, and while we were waiting to go, we were chatting up with the worker about funny stories they've witnessed. She told us that one time a couple had come in who were on a first date. Since they could overhear everything, they found out that the plan was to do an escape room and then go get dinner and drinks afterward. Seems like a pretty nice date idea. Have fun in an escape room and then have something to bond over during dinner and drinks. It's a pretty risky first date though, as escape rooms can bring out the worst in people. So to bring someone you don't know takes some trust that you two have connected prior to going. It turns out that the beast that this girl unleashed manifested itself in complete disregard for the whole situation. Apparently, this guy picked up the girl from her house for the date and she was already hammered. They get into the escape room and she proceeds to just sit in the corner while the guy tries to figure out dial rotations on a toaster oven, asking questions like, "So, what are some places you want to travel to next?" She wouldn't respond to the questions and sort of just belittled him for not being able to figure out the clues while she sat there, and sat there even when the guy got into the second room. The employee said it was like getting a view into a dumpster of a first date in a time pressured environment where both participants were quite literally unable to escape the situation. When they were let out, the girl proceeded to thank the employees for a wonderful time, though it was clear she didn't understand that the employees were watching everything to help give clues and whatnot. Yikes. So it must have been really awkward for this guy trying to enjoy the experience while his day was clearly not on the same page. We definitely have to bookmark this one for like a worst dates ever kind of video, right? Story 2. So I worked for an escape room place during college, and we had this one group of teenagers come in who are about 13, 16 years old. They even had one of their moms because some rooms have a lot of delicate wires and things, and we don't want kids touching on stuff and getting hurt. Anyway, I was walking down the hallway to the room they were playing in, and man, did it smell terrible. I thought someone had made a mess in the bathroom at the end of the hall, which one of our staff had been known to do. So I went to spray some Febreze, which only made it smell worse. After about 30 minutes, when the group came out of the room, one of my coworkers went in to reset it. To our surprise, one of the kids had taken a massive mess right in the corner behind the door and had even tried to cover it up with a little shelter made of chairs and blankets. The worst part was the mother tried to get her money back, claiming it was there when they arrived. Like, "Ma'am, we can see the mess running down your kid's leg." Story 3. I had this woman, her husband, and their daughter come in to do an ancient Egyptian museum themed room. They all seem excited at first. I let them in and turned on the rules video, which they seemed to stay quiet for. Once the game started, though, the woman showed her true Karen colors. The daughter would try to solve things and play with the props, and the dad would generally help her out and keep her from doing anything bad. The woman, however, would constantly snap at both of them and yank clues and props out of their hands. Eventually, she got so mad at the daughter that she let the daughter out of the room. This child went out and sat in the lobby by herself, just trying not to cry. I was watching on the camera and I was so upset that I couldn't do anything. Luckily, the dad came out after 3 to 4 minutes, sat with her, and calmed her down. All the while, this lady was still trying to solve puzzles by herself in the room. After a bit longer, the dad and kid went back in, and the mom stopped them until their time ran out. Definitely one of the most absurd things I've seen, but it doesn't end there. A few weeks later, they were back to do another, and guess what? The same thing happened all over again. They ended up winning this one, but again, about 3/4 of the way through, the mom got stuck. The child was trying to help, and the mom got angry and then had the child and the dad out of the room this time. Again, she was in the room just trying to do puzzles by herself while the dad and kid were comforting each other sitting in the lobby. I'm glad that kid has such a great father figure. She seemed pretty attached to him. It must have been tough for the dad and daughter to actually enjoy themselves with the mom's behavior just constantly overshadowing the fun like that. Ah. Story 4. Some guys sneaked in a lot of small bottles of booze. They managed to always drink them out of our sight except in the last room where they really didn't care anymore. The problem was that they left the bottles everywhere, and days later we still had groups finding some of the bottles, and to this day, I'm sure we're still missing some. Another story, I'm from Europe, and since then our safety regulations are pretty strict. Every room has an emergency button which opens the door next to it. We always tell our customers not to press the button because it would mess up our electronics and they could not continue playing after pressing it. This is a complete lie. We use those buttons regularly to move between rooms. So, this group of people is told the exact same thing right before entering the room. We let them in, close the door, and I go to my workstation, sit down, and feel a sudden sense of unease. They immediately get into the last room. Did I leave the door open? No, I always double check. Electrical failure? Unlikely, the lights would have gone out too. I get into the room, ready to give them 1,000 excuses, then I see it, the button. The exact button I told them not to press is pressed, so yeah, that was a short game. They later told me they wanted to see if the button really works. Yes, it does. It always does. Story 5. I'm currently going on my third year of working at an escape room. Our most popular escape room is our zombie room, which requires an actor as a zombie and an actor as butler. So if something happens in the room, there is someone physically there to take care of it. Originally, the room was meant to just have the zombie, but people kept trying to literally charge the actor, so we had to have a butler there to stop them. Plenty of times, people have whizzed themselves in the room. We ask them to use the bathroom no less than 10 times before the room commences, and some are too embarrassed to ask to go mid-game, so they end up throwing their tighty-whities away in our garbage cans. We tell them time and time again, none of our escape rooms require you to remove anything. What happens? The zombie room is trashed almost daily. Small lock boxes torn in half by muscle men, wires torn out of places by others. I've even seen people purposely use items in the room to shorten the zombie chain, which ends in extensive wasted time between shows just trying to untangle the chain instead of resetting the room. My favorite, most memorable thing is getting a whole room of army men singing Barbie Girl together. They were really into it and knew more than the chorus. Another time, I had them do a runway walk to get a clue, and a dude who was huge broke out of his shell and did a march like no other. He proclaimed to the room his stage name is Liquid Adonis. Zombie had to hide for a solid 5 minutes to try and not laugh in front of the customers. Many times, we've had a room of people act like all feral. They don't listen to the butler giving them hints, they antagonize the zombie. They immediately break rules of no running and throwing things and end up not solving the room because they refuse to listen to the butler or to quit antagonizing the zombie. I once was a butler when a group of kids from the country wanted to treat themselves to the city. They went into our zombie room and it was chaos. At the end, they couldn't stop asking me questions about the room, how it worked, and a majority of them wondered how we got a real live zombie. I wanted to answer all their questions, but we were running low on time, so I had to bring them out to the lobby. A few young ones asked if they'd see me again, and being in character, I proclaimed, "If you ever wake up from a nightmare about a zombie, just look into the cornfields and I'll be there waiting." Needless to say, a few of them started crying. Apparently, they all live near a cornfield. Story 6. I don't work at one, but my coworker went to an escape room last year and his story was hilarious. He's a really serious guy from Boston, but he got talked into going to one with his wife and a few old friends who were down on vacation. He said as soon as they walked in, he saw a broom that looked completely out of place, so he grabbed it, thinking they might need it at some point. They managed to get out of the first room. They proceeded to the second room, and he still had the broom with him. He was convinced it was too out of place not to be part of the puzzle at some point. They successfully made it through the second room. However, in the third room, they got stuck. While everyone else was searching the room and reading the clues repeatedly, he became fixated on the broom. He examined it closely, checking the handle for markings and inspecting the bristles. Time was running out, and he started arguing with his wife that the broom held the final clue. When time ran out, they exited the room and the staff burst out laughing at him. It turned out someone had left the broom behind by mistake, nothing more, nothing less. He had carried that broom through 3 rooms. He found it amusing later but was embarrassed at the time. It made for a great story that he shared the next morning at work. Okay, so I can't believe he actually carried that broom through 3 whole rooms. And if you're enjoying these escapades too, please do make sure to hit that subscribe and like button to stay tuned for more entertaining narratives. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I'm not a worker, just someone who's done a lot of escape rooms and chatter with the staff. Here are some of the absurd things I've heard about. In one room based on the movie Jumanji, there's a waterfall with real water in it. Believe it or not, enough people have tried to drink from it that the staff now have to tell everyone not to in their opening speech. In another room filled with museum-style display cases, each with glass covering the top and different puzzles inside, there's one with sand and small holes on top. Someone tried to tip the display case over to get the sand out and read the hidden message. When the game master told her to stop, she paused briefly and then attempted it again 2 minutes later. When warned that she'd be let out if she tried again, she responded with, "Just making sure you're paying attention." In the horror themed room, people constantly try to pull up floorboards or tear down wallpaper, even after being told there's nothing hidden there and warned they'll be charged for any damage. Story 8. Most of the time, people can just be plain silly, which can both be amusing and frustrating depending on their reaction when they realize it. It's incredibly annoying when people are overconfident beforehand, but then can't solve anything without hints and somehow blame us for their mistakes. There have also been instances of people getting sick or trying to use the prop toilet inside one of the cells. But my favorite absurd story was the one proposal I witnessed while working at an escape game. Now you might think, well, isn't that romantic? And I thought so too, until I found out that the escape room wasn't just a shared passion that made the proposal unique. It was their very first escape game ever. Quite an odd choice of setting for a proposal. Even stranger, they brought along two friends. But it gets even more bizarre. They barely managed to escape, and the ring was hidden in the very last clue. If they hadn't escaped, it would have been incredibly awkward. But even after they did, things still didn't go so smoothly. When he proposed, neither of the friends reacted much, just stood there blankly. It was made worse because the guy was supposed to film the whole thing, which he didn't, and the other girl didn't even know he was proposing. The surprise should have at least elicited a smile, but there was nothing. To add to the awkwardness, the proposal speech lacked any passion and enthusiasm. Later at the reception, the guy confessed to everyone that he wasn't really sure about marrying her, at least not at that moment, but she got pregnant, so it sort of pushed him into it. She said yes, but watching it all unfold, many of us were secretly hoping she wouldn't. Imagine proposing, or worse, being proposed to, in an escape room, knowing you're being watched and listened to through cameras. What an unusual choice to make. Story 9. Once I went to an escape room with my mom, dad, my mom's best friend, and her two sons. The theme of the room was a bank heist. We started in a small room, solving clues to break in, then moved to another room through a hidden passage in the wall. There, we solved more puzzles, opened the vault to grab whatever we could, but when the alarm blared, we had to rush out through another secret passage. In the second room, there was a couple of lifeless dummies and an actor pretending to be passed out. While everyone was focused on the vault, I sat there with my empty money bag and decided to search the lifeless bodies, including the actor, for more clues or valuables. Unfortunately, none of them had anything on them. After we finished and managed to escape with our money bags, we sat down, excitedly discussing the experience. That's when the game master came in, laughing hysterically, followed by the bewildered actor. They told us that in the 3 years since the escape room had opened, no one had ever tried to search them, let alone so thoroughly. I checked every pocket and even removed the shoes from the dummies, though I didn't get that far with the actor. I felt terrible. I didn't realize the actor wasn't a dummy, and I hadn't stopped at just checking his back pockets. My group burst into laughter. The guy was quite young and new to the job, so I suppose we were both pretty embarrassed. Story 10. Saturday's company management team building session turned out to be mandatory for me despite being just a junior. Fate had me end up in a team with a literal Karen. From her appearance to her manner of speaking, everything just said Karen. Even her handwriting on the name cards was terrible. I knew instantly we wouldn't exactly hit it off, but I resolved to just, get through it. After about 5 minutes into the session, she suddenly panicked, having an unannounced fear of enclosed spaces. Who does that? A Karen, that's who. The team wasn't sure if it was her being her usual self or a genuine panic attack. She started taking these exaggerated deep breaths, maybe about 5 of them that I counted, and then collapsed. The team collectively lost it, everyone scrambling and pounding on the locked door, yelling at the same time. At that moment, it seemed like no one was willing to help, either out of shock or just frustration with Karen. As I looked at her lying there, realizing no one was stepping in, I took off my shirt and started administering first aid. Thank goodness for my Boy Scouts training finally paying off. She eventually regained consciousness and I managed to calm her down until the paramedics arrived. She ended up with a concussion and a few stitches. When I walked into the office on Monday, I was immediately called into a meeting with the CFO. I wasn't sure what to expect, never having met the man before. It turns out Karen wasn't just any employee, she was his wife. I certainly had no clue about that. He thanked me sincerely and expressed his admiration for my leadership and quick action. A month later, he promoted me to a senior position directly under him. Okay, cool. So I guess the moral of this story is never let anyone, not even a Karen, make you lose your sense of compassion. And definitely consider getting basic first aid training something that I definitely need to do, whether through Boy Scouts or elsewhere. Story 11. Working at an escape room with my fiance was a blast despite our difficult boss. Here are a few memorable incidents. Once I was at the front desk while my friend was a game master for a huge party of Herbalife ladies. If you don't know, Herbalife sells questionable stuff like those healthy energy arm patches, basically just pure caffeine. All 20 of these conservative looking middle aged ladies were acting like they'd chugged a gallon of espresso before entering. They failed the room in a caffeine induced panic. We had a room designed like a Cold War submarine with bunk beds. Our boss had to ask a couple to leave for trying to be intimate on the beds. Here's one my fiance witnessed. We had a train car themed room with dark wood and old photos. There was a tricky puzzle involving a candlestick holder that triggered secret doors when set upright. Our boss was frugal and never fixed it properly, so the puzzle often caused problems. One day, someone left the screwdriver in the room and the customers found it and decided to unscrew every picture frame from the walls, causing chaos before the game master intervened. We also had a romantic proposal in that train car room once. The ring was hidden inside the bomb at the end of the game. When the bomb doors popped open, the guy proposed and she said yes, thankfully. We've also had our fair share of lively bachelor and bachelorette parties who often tore the rooms apart. Fun times, but boy, were those days wild. Story 12. Not a worker, but a player. We did a big 10-person escape room, which was essentially 3 different areas connected together. The first area had like 5 people divided into 2 prison cells. Everything one cell did provided the other cell with a new hint or puzzle to solve. One involved helping the other side use a powerful magnet to guide a ball through a puzzle reflected in a mirror to open the door. 2 rooms later, we were on the final puzzle in a library. We knew the task was to arrange a set of chess pieces on a board to make a key fall off a hook inside a glass case on the wall. After about 20 minutes of debate and only 5 minutes left to finish, I had the clever idea of using that strong magnet to pull the key off the hook. As you can imagine, it worked. We opened the door and the staff didn't know what to do because apparently we were the first ones to ever try that. All right, cool. If you like these stories and were reminded of your own escape room experiences, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video, and thanks for escaping with me on this one.